Hello, and welcome to the Hamumu Halloween Home Horror Hoedown.
The podcast where we watch 31 horror movies throughout the hallowed month of October.
Ranging from the critically acclaimed to film school projects gone gruesomely awry.
And we take them all way too seriously.
I'm your host, Mike Hummel.
And I'm your host, Sully Hummel.
Now warning, we use a ghoulish number of spoilers, so watch the movies first.
Second warning, we don't know anything about anything, so don't take us seriously while we take these movies seriously. Let's talk about It Comes at Night from 2017.
Yes.
So It Comes at Night is a post-apocalyptic story.
So it would seem.
Although we are never even remotely given a fraction of an idea of what actually happened.
Yeah, it's like The Walking Dead, except there's no zombies.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's clear that it's a zombie movie in the sense that there is something infecting people and the non-infected people are terrified of this infection. But
Yes.
maybe it's not even a zombie movie.
Well,
maybe it's
yeah.
just infection.
I don't think there's any evidence that these infected people become zombies, but I mean, it still makes sense to not let them touch you and to burn up their bodies and all, because it's a bad disease.
I mean, that's the thing. I was thinking that the burning of their bodies was, stopping them from coming back, but that's just something we also do when we have an excessive amount of bodies happening.
Yeah.
And no way of addressing that situation. So there's some kind of infection. We don't know what. We don't know where it came from. We don't really know how it works. We have a vague idea of how this family, who are the main characters of the story, what they think is happening, but we don't really know. And then beyond that, it becomes the story of, in this post-apocalyptic world, what happens when you, who have kind of hunkered down and established your routine, come across someone else who needs help.
Indeed.
Which then reminds me of Blood Quantum, where the Micmac tribe was having to decide whether or not to help the white folks that were coming across the bridge.
Yeah. That's the crux of the whole movie, is he's presented with somebody who breaks into his house and, they need food and stuff and they've got family waiting for them. And even as a non-Sully, most of my notes are about how all of this could have been avoided if he had just shot that guy in the head and moved on. Like, it's so interesting, these post-apocalyptic stories, which this is basically like an arc from The Walking Dead. This is a few episodes of The Walking Dead that we just watched, because it's all about people and different groups and not trusting each other.
Oh yeah, trust is a huge thing. Like, there are so many situations where, as the viewer, I was caught in between these two, not knowing. Like, we don't know who's right. And yeah.
I mean, we trust the main characters because they're the main characters, so we're like, they're gonna be fine, but we never know quite what the other guy's up to, and you want to help people, but don't do it.
But there were also situations, though, where I was like, I can see how this other guy, the stranger, how he's having to trust that these people, he's putting himself and his family in the hands of these strangers. Like, he had no reason to trust them. We did, because we knew they were the main characters, but he had no reason to think that they weren't going to, steal their goats and chickens and then murder them all in the woods, which, I mean, he wasn't totally wrong there.
Yeah. Well, that was, the big final conflict, the final showdown. Nobody was wrong. No. Everyone was trying to stay safe, and because there wasn't any trust, they all were at each other's throats and at any moment could kill each other, and none of it was wrong. It's very tricky.
There was also, though, reason not to trust each other, because the ultimate showdown it starts because there is a chance that one of them has been infected with this, whatever it is that comes on the night air, right?
Yeah.
But apparently doesn't get in the house. Like, how is the house airtight? Like, okay, there were some flaws there.
No, I don't think that's what it was, though. First, I think It Comes at Night is a meaningless title, and there's nothing that comes at night. I don't know. Maybe that's not true.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because one of my last notes was, what's with the title?
Yeah. But I think the disease was just like a regular disease that was out there. And so they were afraid of being bitten by something, or maybe just catching it airborne. So they tried to stay hunkered down, and they wore masks when they went outside.
But it became clear that that child had been infected.
Yes.
How did he get infected? Was it from the dog? Was the dog out there at that point?
Oh, remember, the door to the dog had been opened, and they thought the kid had done it. So probably he got infected by the dog. Yeah.
Okay.
And the dog got it somewhere out in the woods. They knew something had happened.
Right. Okay, so to go back to that, like, they strongly suspect that one of them, the youngest, like this 5-year-old kid, has been exposed to whatever infection this is, whatever virus this is or whatnot. And they sort of do the right thing in that they all talk about quarantining and they go to their own rooms, but then nobody actually stays in their room. Like, they don't actually quarantine. They just talk about quarantining. And they definitely want to enforce the quarantine on the other group.
Yeah.
But they each consider their own group somehow exempt from it.
Yeah.
And that felt very relatable and real.
That is relatable.
Because if we've learned nothing else, it's that literally everyone in our country has some reason why they shouldn't have to follow whatever set of protocols, myself included. Like, there was a point where I got on a plane and went to California for a wedding.
Yeah.
You know, it was during the lull. It was when we thought things were getting better. Like, I have a lot of reasons why I decided that that was okay. But honestly, that was just me justifying why I didn't have to continue following the protocols, you know? Yeah. And we've all been doing that.
To be fair, that wasn't the real protocols. That was our protocols, because we are going much tighter than America's rules.
So what I meant by that was, though, is the protocols that would actually have been safe and effective in some way.
Yeah.
Because what we've been doing is literally just suffering for no reason whatsoever, because we haven't been following them enough to actually have them be any good. So then we're just denying ourselves with no positive outcome from the denial.
Yeah, it's not been broken. Well managed at all.
And in this movie, it was that same mentality of like, oh, but I need to leave the room for this really important reason. When in fact, no.
Nope.
Everyone just stays in the room until the quarantine period is over, or until everyone in the room is dead. Like,
yeah, and this disease went fast. It was like one day and you're dead.
Right. Now, would the outcome of the movie been any different had they both families gone into their separate rooms and stayed there and not come out again?
I'm going to say no, but only because their stupid son had already gotten infected. So
that's the thing. Like, all of the tragedy that happened at the end of this movie where Paul is, like, hunting down this other family and murdering them one by one, like, all of that could have been avoided, and it could have just gone its natural way where they would have all just died of the virus.
Yeah.
Instead, we had to add all this human violence on top of it.
All of that happened because they completely violated Sully's rules of infection. Because the family with the child that was sick, first child that was sick, they were like, no, he's our baby. Let's just hug onto him real tight and not, separate ourselves from him because we like him so much. And
but
so they just got super sick.
Didn't they both get infected at the same time, though? Like, because I think the kid, he opened the door to let the dog in, I guess. I don't know. And then the older boy finds him sleeping somewhere and returns him home, to his bedroom.
And that
so
was
those two, they both get infected then. There was no point where a decision could have been made where the original family would have been saved.
Well, if they had also quarantined from their son.
But they didn't know, like...
No, they didn't.
None of that information was out until everyone had already been exposed.
That's true. But what this other family did with their little kid was complete disregard for Sully's rules. It was, we like our kid.
They wanted to, they knew he was sick, and they wanted to, like, take him and wander out into the world, which I guess Paul having to kill them all, like, saved other people. Mm-hmm. But it didn't make a difference for anybody in this movie, I don't think.
Yeah, it was all about that trust, because there was the whole thing where that we can't let them leave because they can come back and take our stuff. And it's interesting because it's this post-apocalyptic story, and everybody watching it, I would imagine, feels like, yeah, this is understandable. You can't trust, everyone's on the edge of death and is taking absolute precautions. But then you think about the real world. Why is it okay to trust anybody in the real world? Which we do. We let people into our house all the time to do stuff, and they could just up and murder us. But it's okay because we know they're not that desperate.
I was going to say, desperation is the key in this scenario. And it turns out, like, I think had the dog not gotten sick and had the dog not infected the kid, I don't think this stranger family was untrustworthy. I think they were fine. And if they hadn't been forced to choose between protecting strangers and protecting their own, these two families could have lived together for a long time. Like, I don't think either family had the intention of killing the other to take their resources. I think they were prepared to share and be a community.
Yeah.
But then you throw in that extra pressure of, it's that loyalty. It's like they had to choose between taking care of their son and taking care of this tenuously created community. And they hadn't established enough of a relationship for that to survive that challenge.
Yeah, that makes sense. It was just not safe. Not safe for anybody.
No, it wasn't. And, like, this was one of the most depressing movies that we have seen all month, and possibly one of the most depressing horror movies we've seen in all of our reviewing. Like, I can think of very few that leave so little hope at the end. There's that black and white one.
The Eyes of My Mother.
Yes. And I don't know, maybe the Babadook or...
The Babadook is depressing.
Oh, there was that other one about a mother where it was the mom and the daughter in the car in the woods.
The Monster.
Yeah.
These are the ones we give 5s to.
I mean, well, there's something to be said about exploring that kind of dark place, right? Mm-hmm. But usually there's some kind of growth or hope or, like, well, that's over, but everyone else is okay kind of feeling. And in this one, it was just, well, I guess they shouldn't have tried to be human.
Yeah. We don't know what's happening in the world outside of these people. And it's weird. Like, maybe these are the last people alive in the world. Or maybe it was just a local disease and it's nothing. And they don't seem to know. No.
For some reason, like, at first I thought they had ended up in this house, in this, way out in the woods, separate from everybody, like, by fleeing whatever was happening.
Yeah.
But when he was asking the stranger all kinds of questions about, like, what did he see on the way here and all of this, I really got the sense that they didn't actually know whether there were other people out there or what had happened to them, or, like, that they had just been lucky.
Yeah.
In the sense that they were separated from everyone else when whatever happened, and then knew enough not to go back, but didn't really know what was going on.
I mean, it feels like this is sort of early days of this apocalypse. It's like...
Except it can't be too early days because they've already got all of these protocols in place. They've got their house all boarded up and they know, like, here's when we wear our masks. Here's when it's okay to not wear masks because they took them off outside during daytime hours. Like, they had come up with all of these kind of arbitrary rules about what the world was like now.
Yeah.
And we never got any sense of whether those rules were accurate or not.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like, if we just don't know stuff or if they didn't really flesh that out and figure it out.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell.
They had a garden in their attic.
Yeah.
With, like, not fully mature plants, but definitely plants that were grown. So, like, this had to have been months into it at least.
Yeah. But, not not years later where this is just life now. Like,
Yeah.
it had that because the stranger, Will, was like, you know, we were in the city and we fled the city and now we're here and we don't have food. So it feels like, you know, we're not deep into this.
Yeah. But then he fled the city and he just happens to have a flock of chickens and some goats.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, okay, I said earlier that neither family seemed like they were really bad, that they just didn't trust each other for, I mean, what, to my pragmatist mind, are smart reasons.
Sure.
But there were definitely some hints that maybe he wasn't being upfront about everything.
Right. There were several things, like when Paul first took Will back home to get his wife and son, they got jumped by some guys very quickly, and it felt very much like an ambush Will had set up. And then there was some weirdness over why'd you shoot that guy, which made it seem like he was actually a friend of Will's, and he's trying to still be sneaky, but also really wished his friend hadn't been shot. But that never plays out. That never means anything.
The thing is, though, even if that was true and they had set up an ambush, the two people he had set up an ambush with were now dead.
Yeah.
And so the smart thing for him to do would be to disavow all knowledge of who they were
definitely.
and just move on, like make new alliances.
Yeah.
It's the only way.
But then one part of the movie was about how Travis, the son of Paul, would go into like the attic and listen to people in the house talking, and he never heard the new people say anything incriminating, which that should have been a part of it if there was something going on.
And it could very well be that he just was shocked that Paul had shot this guy without asking him any questions or finding any information out or anything. Like, that he just wasn't prepared for that level of decisiveness in the face of this. And Paul's decisiveness, I think, is what has kept his family alive all this time.
Up till now.
And that's the whole thing about the movie, is that he has this decisiveness, and then the decisiveness comes up against, do I let this other family die? Do I have them directly on my conscience in order to protect my own family? And he couldn't do it.
I mean, this is...
And his wife didn't let him do it, you know?
The moral of the movie is don't be moral.
Absolutely. I mean, there is no ambiguity about the last scene where everyone in the Stranger family, Will, Kim, and Andrew are all dead, horrifically.
Yeah.
Travis is dead. The dog is dead. Like, all of these deaths have happened because they were together when the one person got infected. And the two remaining people, Paul and Sarah, are just sitting across the table looking at each other, clearly infected and waiting to die. Like, knowing that one choice to let this other family in was the end. They lost everything.
Do not have empathy, ever. And that's not a great message.
It's not. And that's the thing about horror movies, is you can't take them to be life lessons. You know, like, there's a difference. Well, I mean, there are some, but I think, as much as we joke about, my zombie protocols and whatnot, I can watch this movie and be like, oh, Paul was right all along. He should not have compromised his ideals. Like, he was keeping his family safe, and he let empathy become a weakness that caused him to lose everything. Like, that's what this movie is saying. I can watch that as a story and be entertained by it, but in no way am I going to take that and make that be my actual decisions about the world.
That's good.
Like, it just can't, because
even if you survive, you're not really living anymore.
I mean, yes, you said that like it's cheesy, but I was going to say the exact same thing.
I believe it. What's the point in being alive if you're just a rat in a cave fending off everything else? I don't know why it's a rat, but whatever.
Yeah. And the thing is, that was the harshest part about the movie, is that this original family, Travis and Sarah and Paul and Bud, the grandfather who dies at the very beginning, like, they were all in this house. The fact that one of them had been infected already means that they weren't safe. Mm-mm. They were just safer. And they were not happy. Like, they were not a happy family unit. Sarah and Paul were not, like their marriage wasn't in a good place. Like nobody was living a satisfied, complete life.
It's a high-stress existence.
Right. And yeah, I mean, I guess you want to stay alive because there's the potential that life could get better at any given moment. That's the mist theory.
Yes.
But that potential came along. And for a while, for several, for like the middle of the movie, you were seeing them all kind of come back to life. Like you were seeing that having new people around reinvigorated them and gave them more purpose. They were teaching each other things and sharing, and the children, the two kids were not playing together because they were very different ages, but there was community building.
Yeah.
And then it all ended.
And my note about that section of the movie was, I'm more on edge now that it's all idyllic.
Right.
Like, I was scared of what was coming.
Well, it wasn't ever idyllic, because even as all of that was happening, I'm like, oh, so this teenage kid is definitely creeping on the new lady in the house, which is not going to do good things. Mm-hmm. And there was a weird, situation and potential tension where the new dad was teaching Travis, the teenage boy, how to chop wood.
Yeah.
And all I could think was, first of all, if they've been out there for more than a week, how does Travis not already know how to chop wood? Like, come on.
Uh-huh.
And you watch Paul kind of seeming to be jealous of the relationship that Will is developing with Paul's son. And part of me is like, well, why didn't you teach him how to do this? Like, you step up, Yeah. You left a void. But there was definitely a weird tension there, too.
That's kind of my biggest feeling about this movie. My first note is feels like a Netflix original. And it does. Like, it has the look and the feel of a Netflix original, even right down to the unsatisfying ending.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very distinct and complete ending. But it's also, the whole movie presents you with tons of potential questions and ideas and, what's Will doing? Is he working with these guys? Is he trying to take his family away? Is he plotting to kill them? Are they plotting to kill him? Mm-hmm. All of these things come up, and in the end, none of it is addressed and none of it matters because they get sick and die, and that's it.
Yeah. Those two guys, who are they?
Yeah.
What were they doing? Why have they not come across any other people if there were two other strangers that close
half a
by?
mile away?
Yeah, there were a lot of loose threads left at the end of this movie.
Yeah.
More than were necessary. Which almost feels like they were put in because the movie was going to be too short. There wasn't enough story unless you put in all these side bits, but then they didn't really care about any of the side bits. So they were just, packing peanuts.
When we were 23 minutes from the end of the movie, I wrote, still not clear what's happening at all, which is kind of dumb because it was very clear what's happening. It's all really straightforward, but they put in all these hints of other things and none of it was anything.
Right. Suggestions that it wasn't as straightforward, and then it was. Which
goes to the question of what actually happened on the fateful night, because the outside door got opened and Stanley came in, and also the inside door got opened. They had like an airlock room basically, and both of those doors got opened so that the dog could get into the airlock room and die there. And so are we just saying Andrew did all that? He just opened all the doors, he heard the dog and did it? Because
I don't know, because I feel like I remember at one point they were saying it couldn't have been Andrew because he wasn't tall enough to open those doors.
Yeah, they thought it was really unlikely.
I don't know.
And it feels like there's some kind of monster that comes at night that is an issue, but there was no monster, so I don't know.
Yeah, it was confusing, to say the least.
Yes.
So within minutes of starting this movie, I had my big important question for the movie. And then way toward the end, it kind of surfaced again in a way. So my big important question is idealism, because we keep coming back to these ideas of idealism and pragmatism and,
we do.
Romanticizing the world and, all of that. That seems to be our theme this month. Is idealism reserved for the privileged?
Yes, it is. I mean, that's basically what it is. You can have hope that things will work out for you if, in fact, during your life, things have worked out for you.
Yes.
And
if you have lived a life where things have consistently not worked out for you, you learn not to trust idealism. You learn not to trust hope. And you become much more pragmatic, I think. You become much more...
hardened.
Hardened is a good word. Yeah. So then when it came back around at the end was because Travis, when the quarantining stuff was all happening, Travis was not anywhere near as pragmatic as his parents were, right? He was like,
nope.
He's just a kid. Like, he was trying to protect this other family. He didn't want to see them have to make the decisions that they all knew they had to make, right?
Yes.
And it made me realize, in this sense and in the real world, youth is a form of privilege because he hasn't been beaten down the way his parents had been beaten down. He hasn't experienced loss and mistakes and failures and all of those things, betrayal, all of that, in the same way that his parents have, just not necessarily because their lives were that terrible. I don't know what their lives were like, but just sheer time spent on Earth provides you with more experience around that.
They say idealism of youth is a thing, and that's it.
And I mean, I guess that wasn't like a new idea for me, but this movie like pulled that all together in a really interesting way.
Yeah, Travis was shocked when he like comes back to his parents after sneaking out and listening to the stranger family talking about, we're going to leave and we want to get out of here. He comes in and he's like, hey, I think they're going to leave.
Everything will be okay.
And he didn't think that was anything. And his parents immediately jumped up and got their guns and they're like, we're going to have to kill them now.
Right? Even Sarah, who
yes.
definitely was not as hardcore as Paul was, they were like, oh no, we cannot let this family go out and tell people that we exist and we have resources that other people will want.
Yeah.
Which was an interesting choice, I think, in terms of storytelling, because they could have avoided that and made them seem softer and more appropriate, more relatable, I guess, from the privilege of not being in a post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah.
If they had said, oh no, we cannot let this family who we know is infected go out into the world and infect other people. Like they could have taken the exact same actions for what could have been considered a more quote unquote noble purpose.
True.
Instead, it was straight up, no way. They will tell people about us. Other people will come. We cannot defend ourselves against any more people. We have to keep ourselves secret.
Yeah. And in 2021, that more noble idea, I mean, that's what we just keep telling everybody you got to do. Just do it. Just protect everyone around you. It's so easy. It's not even a big sacrifice. But no, there's so many people who just want their little kingdom and to shoot anybody who comes near.
And I know that there are a lot of people where it is a big sacrifice, where they will lose their homes, or they will not be able to feed their children, or they will...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those things.
Like there are so many people who are forced to go out into the world every single day because they or their children will die if they don't, right?
Yep.
And those are the people who everyone is mad at, when in fact, there are way more people like us who should be staying home, who are not staying home, not because we will die, like literally die if we don't, but because, I'll just die if I don't get my coffee. I'll just die if I don't go see, my friends right now. Like, it's that idea of, well, again, the privilege of idealism and not having suffered in the way other people have. So the very idea of not being able to go where you want to go exactly when you want to go there is unthinkable.
Yeah.
Ratings. It Comes at Night has flaws. There are too many loose ends. I don't think the writing is as tight as it pretends to be.
Uh-huh.
But overall, it was very enjoyable to watch. Enjoyable in the sense that it was an entertaining story. It kept me interested. The technical skills of making this movie were well done. I liked the acting of everyone involved. But I think that Netflix original kind of weakness there in the ending and in the really weaving all of the pieces together properly is going to cost it.
Mm-hmm.
So I am going to give this movie 4.5 red doors out of 5. I want this to be a 5+ movie. It goes into 5+ territory in a big way, but it fails to fulfill all of the promises that it sets up. So it just can't.
Yeah. Plot is very important to me. It's a big part of what I watch a movie for. You know, like, I'm interested to see how these pieces that they've laid out are going to come together. And so you get a movie like this that lays out a bunch of pieces and then you step on them like they're Legos and they jab you in the foot for the worse pain than childbirth. Absolutely. And that just really ruins it for me to the point where I don't feel that there's any reason to ever watch this movie. Like,
Really?
It doesn't have a point. Like, it's very Netflix original in that way, where it's like, why did we watch all these different events when in the end everyone just falls over dead? It's one of those things.
See, I disagree with you.
Yeah, I mean, you seem to appreciate a lot about it.
Because I did get something. Like, I feel like they presented their point.
Yeah, which is an evil point.
Yes.
But I agree with that, but it's, again, it comes back to plot. Like, as a plot, there's nothing to it. There's no arc or anything for it to tell me. There's just everybody falls over dead.
I mean, I see what you're saying, but I imagine that as more of like an open house movie where there was literally no explanation.
Yes.
Nothing happened.
I agree with that.
We had no idea. There was no message from it. Whereas this one feels less like they just forgot to write the last 10 minutes of the movie and more like, they just used too many packing peanuts and they didn't address all the packing peanuts. Yeah. I don't know. But, I see your point.
Those packing peanuts are a problem for me.
Yeah.
And mostly because of how strongly and intensely they set things up. You know, they left all these real strong emotions, like especially throughout the entire movie, Travis has all these dreams. They always involve black goo, which is like the sickness. And it seems like it means something, and it doesn't. I mean, other than, I guess, their premonitions of the fact that he's going to get sick and die, but... Or
just straight-up anxiety dreams, because he lives in a world where people suddenly get sick and die within a couple of days.
But they're presented in such a forward way, right in your face, of this is important, and it's not. So, all of that kind of thing really puts me off of it, but I really respect the quality of it. It's so much a Netflix original in every way for me. Like, really high quality, well created, well acted, well built, but not well written and not put together in a good way. So I'm only going to give it 3 red doors out of 5.
Okay.
And I don't recommend it because it doesn't feel like it goes anywhere.
Interesting. This is one of those rare times where we have very differing opinions.
Yes.
Because I definitely recommend watching this movie.
I can see you doing that. Yeah.
Well, anybody who's listened to enough of our podcast will know whether they
agree
with you or whether they agree with the person who knows what they're talking about.
You just said the same thing twice. You should go back and fix that.
You're funny. So then let's talk about the
Evil Twins,
which is It Waits from 2005. I know that I'm supposed to be leading this conversation, but I watched this movie with you.
You were doing something written, I think.
Well, I mean, I wasn't watching it, like I was sitting in the room, but I did pay attention more than I expected to. And at this moment in time, I literally cannot remember one single detail about this movie. So I'm going to have you lead the conversation.
Well, I think you're better off. I think you're doing just fine with that. This is, it's the story of a park ranger kind of person.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I got it now.
She's out there supposed to be like watching the forest from her little tower, and then a monster comes and like kills everybody.
Yeah.
And that's what happens.
But the meat of the story is that she's also dealing with trauma around something that happened to her friend and her feelings about that thing that happened. And that's supposed to be like the deep, meaningful part of the movie. And it was terrible.
It was. There's no reason anyone needs to see this movie. It's one of those really low budget, just cheeseball. It looks like a sci-fi original. It's a dumb little monster zipping around. There's a great part where a human corpse is dropped from the sky onto someone to smush them, and that was cool.
There were several times when bodies or body parts were dropped from above, like rolled off of rooftops, or
it happened a lot. Yeah, the monster would mess around with people by like, leaving out corpses and moving them around to make it scary for them. And it was not scary for me. It was scary for the characters.
So I do remember one part where she goes back to somewhere and goes in, and the monster has set 3 of the people that it's already killed up in like a vignette situation, sitting at the dining room table, and one of them has their head on a plate.
Yeah, something like that.
What?
That's how it is. That's how this monster operates.
I mean, that suggests a level of planning and thought, and
it was a smart monster.
It was like psychologically torturing her.
Yeah.
Rather than just attacking her.
Yeah, I mean, you might think that would be interesting, but it was not.
It was not. Because that was the only instance of that happening. The rest of it was just her being attacked by a monster. Like it might as well have been a bear.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I clearly cannot rate this movie because I did not watch it enough to actually know what was going on.
Okay.
But if I was going to rate it, I would give it a 1.
It was bad. I'm going to give it 1 African gray parrot out of 5. Also, this is one of those movies where a parrot is played by a person doing the voice, and it's never convincing.
No.
You totally know it's a person.
Yeah. I had some theories about the parrot that did not come true, but would have made for a much more interesting movie.
Yeah, if it was secretly the killer.
No, I can't tell you what my theory is without giving away important details of the movie.
Yeah. Well, this movie was a waste of time. Don't watch it.
Just know if you have any smart ideas while you're watching about what could be going on with the parrot, it's not.
That's a spoiler.
What? And coming up tomorrow, what do we have?
Tomorrow's film is entitled Charlie's Farm from 2014. And we couple this with a film from 2010 called Farm. And you think, well, I see the connection, but do you see the connection? Because in fact, I saw the little blurb about this movie, and it is not only called Farm, it's a farm owned by a guy named Charlie. So it's effectively the exact same movie.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, surely there can't be anything else to these movies.
Obviously not. Can I tell you, Charlie's Farm, the first thing my brain did was put Charlie the Unicorn of YouTube fame and Animal Farm together.
Well, that's interesting. That's much more artistic, because for me, when I hear Charlie's Farm, I'm like, this is like a little Nickelodeon show. You know?
Sure. Like it's a cartoon where it's all weebles.
Yeah. They're like, come on down to Charlie's Farm, Charlie's Farm, Charlie's Farm.
Okay.
That's probably what it is.
Well, I guess we'll see which one of us is right.
Yeah.
I will see you back here tomorrow.
Okay. See you then on the flippity floppity.
No.
Yeah. That's where I'll see you. Oh, Charlie.
I'm not going to start with so.
Come on down to Charlie's Farm, Charlie's Farm, Charlie's Farm.
We're going to delete that.
Good. Okay. I mean,
terrible.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you might think that would be interesting, but it was not.
It was not.